Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Betty Cruz, and I'm the president and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh. Welcome to day 3 of our second annual summit. Today's conversation, Forced to Flee, Understanding the Experiences of Refugees and Exiled People in Pittsburgh, will feature a moderated discussion on the experiences of those forced to leave their homes who are now living in Pittsburgh. In the context of the summit's theme, Into the Depths, exploring this global moment, we hope to explore the ways in which people who are forced to flee can best be supported and ultimately feel that Pittsburgh is a place where they belong. Here at the Council, our new vision calls for a globally minded and globally connected world that is equitable and just for all. And we know we can't do this without partners whose collaboration widens our audience and pushes us to spark bold thoughts together. So we're very thankful for our partnership with City of Asylum and Jewish Family and Community Services here today, as well as Pump, who is our lead community partner for the entire summit. I would now like to introduce our opening artist for today's program, Sun Luu. Sun Luu is an Asian American writer, performer, and speaking artist based in Los Angeles, California. He's a poetry slam champion many times over, who has opened up shows for acts such as the Black Eyed Peas, George Watsky, and G. Yamazawa. He's shared stages with legends like Saul Williams, Rudy Francisco, Matthew Cuban, and Alicia Wise. His work explores his Chinese and Vietnamese heritage, sexuality, masculinity, and self-love, and has been covered by BuzzFeed, All Deaf Poetry, and the Huffington Post. It is my pleasure to welcome Sun Luu at our program today. To ground us in this topic, we'll be covering the experiences of people who leave their homes in search of a better life. Sun, take it away.
Thank you so much, Betty. I appreciate it. And I'm really grateful to be here to speak with y'all at the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh. So thank you for that lovely intro. I feel like my reputation precedes me. I feel like I'm just a guy here to share stories of my people. And a big part of this conversation is acknowledging, the pain and the trauma in order to find solutions for how to resolve it. So I'm here to share stories of my people, of my culture, and really grateful to have this opportunity to share with y'all. So I'm gonna get right into it. So the craft of a craft that I work towards and work in is called spoken word poetry. So it's a performance, it's a poetry performance in which my coach loves to tell me is poetry that's off the page and on the stage. So this is work that I've accumulated and chose specifically for this event. So I'll just get right into it. So a Food Network called Bon Appetit had posted a video some time ago titled "Pho is the New Ramen," where Philadelphia city chef Tyler Akins teaches 20 million viewers how to prepare a bowl of pho, and he gives all the wrong instructions while twirling the noodle spaghetti style. He claims that sriracha ruins the flavor, and I don't know if he's trying to say that it's too spicy. He claims that pho is on the rise to replace ramen, as if there can only be like one Asian phenomenon at a time. And for a review on Vietnamese cuisine, you would have thought the producers would have picked someone, I don't know, Vietnamese or Japanese or Chinese or someone they can't tell the difference between. Or why didn't they choose someone who chooses to mispronounce my father's own name? Why did they choose someone who refused to see a bowl of pho as salvation? What is religion to a starving man? What does a white God and good table manners mean to a country at war with itself? Tyler, have you ever made soup from bones, fed the children first, and still starved the family? Maybe we drown our soup in sauce because we remember a history seasoned in tears. We remember when uncles bit their wrists just to taste the salts. Even cooking becomes its own trauma. The grip of the ladle, both trigger warning and deliverance to an immigrant. I've never seen my father cry unless he talked about his own father. My father can be a quiet man. My mother, on the other hand, tells me, and I quote, "The universe will give you a pimple For every speck of rice, you don't eat off the plate. She is a funny woman. She thinks if she can smile through the interview, the employer won't notice the accent, but they always do. They know she does not belong. Her eyes are a dead giveaway before she even opens her mouth, and every night she cooks the family a memory, kitchen practice to remember where she came from. One night, she would cook me a week's worth of pho, only to have it be called worms, the food for savages, but the same Americans who now use my food as a picture on Instagram. But my food is not a fashion statement. My father hates speaking on an empty stomach, so really we can only ever speak over dinner. My food be a bridge made of chopsticks, be the bread blessed by ancestors. How many have died for me to live on for them? My food be a survivor's guilty pleasure, and I am tired of listening to my history being told by someone who does not look like me. I am tired of my bullies asking me to try a new dish that my mom makes better. And I want to see where my son can smile wide and not be called chink or gook or China virus or the failures of America. And I want a day where I can see my son tell me on his first day of school how lucky he is to have parents that cook him a meal, and he will look at me smiling like a source of pride, like the heroes I never got to see in the movies until just recently. And for anyone who dares to consume this story without my consent, this future without my consent, I say go for it. Have your fill. Bite off more than you can chew, and then gag at the roots. Thank you, guys. So my next and final piece for today is actually a really deep and personal piece for me. It's one of the first poems I'd written for my family, for my father in particular. It takes on the persona of my late grandfather, speaking to my own father about his refugee experience and what he'd hope my father would learn before his passing. So this poem is titled, "The Letter My Grandpa Never Gave My Dad." Dear son, I remember when you told me, Appa, I want to be just like you when I grow up. I gave a nervous chuckle. I cupped your hands in mine and looked you in the eyes, but before I could confess, I saw the pride in those pupils. So I hinged my lips back in place just to bask in your smile a little longer, son. I don't think you understand what it's like to be me. Don't think you can understand the immigration pains embedded in these scars. Don't know, even comprehend how 16-hour work days, 7 days a week, can really take its toll on a man's heart. Yet how sick days meant extinction. You don't know the affliction of waking up, grateful to be alive, but afraid to keep living. Yet I have no time for emotions. You have reminded you that crying was unmanly, because my tears would have drowned the family before the fishing boats would. But see, this world is too cruel and too relentless, will not lend its ear to our sacrifices. I come home from work every night, having been called fob more than father, been confused Chinese for chink. But see, we Asians didn't know enough English to speak back, so we let our bodies sign language our submission. We kept our mouths shut, our chins down, faked a smile in the face of authority. It's no wonder why America teaches us that we're the model minority. But my son, I did not bring you here to end up like me. You are too young to be your old man, and I will not allow you to pledge allegiance to the anthem of insults as I was forced to. My footsteps were never meant to be followed. They were meant to pave the roads your feet would never touch gravel. So please stop stepping in my shoes. I bought you brand new Nikes for a reason. I brought you here for a reason. So inherit my longings for a better life. Take my native tongue and speak with firecrackers in your throat and a dynasty in your walk. Keep the solstice in your eyes and grow jade for bones. Be as self-aware as you are stubborn, strict as you are supportive. Be everything I wanted but could not be. My son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I won't be alive to teach you all these things in person. I'm sorry that there were generational skills that took a generation to learn, but my son, you are a smart boy. And our family is a proud family. And there is a story in your smallpox scar, and history in our blood. Men will try to cut you out of society, demand you go back to a broken country I have bled to bring you out of. They don't know the sacrifices. It is your job to remind them. Thank you.
Wow. Sun, thank you so much for joining us again a second time this year. We love you at the council, your story, your words. Thank you for sharing your talent, your passion with us. It's beautiful. Really, really moved. Thank you so much. With that, let's move into our conversation with our panelists today. I can't imagine a better way to ground us on this important topic than those powerful words that Sun just shared. Today, I'm joined by Ivonne Smith-Tapia, Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services at Jewish Family and Community Services. Before joining JFCS, Ivonne worked for more than a decade with the Colombian government, international NGOs, and think tanks promoting community development, education, human rights, and leadership in diverse rural and urban communities in Colombia. She moved to Pittsburgh from Colombia in 2013 and has been an active member of the Pittsburgh community ever since as chair of the All for All Coalition and a board member of Casa San Jose, and was a member of our team before rotating into this important role that she's having with the refugee community locally. Andrés Franco, Executive Director of City of Asylum, is also with us today. Andrés joined City of Asylum in 2020 after serving as resident conductor of the Pittsburgh Symphony. Andrés currently serves as the Exposure Advocacy Committee of the Pittsburgh Foundation, the Programming Advisory Committee of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, and on the WQED Community Advisory Board. A native of Medellin, Colombia, Andrés' new role with City of Asylum allows him to fuse his commitment to creative free expression with his real life experience as a foreign-born artist in Pittsburgh. Noor Fazly is a refugee employment specialist with Jewish Family and Community Services. Originally from Afghanistan, he has been involved with JFCS language interpretation since 2018. Fazly, as many call him, many who know him, and I've had the pleasure to know Fazly for a couple of years now, came to the United States in 2016 as part of the Special Immigrant Visa Program. Prior to coming to America, he worked for the U.S. Department of State's U.S. Embassy in Kabul as a legal assistant. He has a Bachelor in Law and Political Science from Parat University and is currently studying cybersecurity at the Community College of Allegheny County CCAC. He will continue his higher education at the University of Pittsburgh. Ivonne, Andrés, Fazly, thank you so much for being here today. Whew. I'm still processing Sun's words and letting that all sink in. I'd love to hear from each of you on your own personal immigrant individual journeys. What brought you to the States? What was it like to settle into life in Pittsburgh? Ivonne, let's start with you.
Thanks, and I am very happy to join all of you today for this event. My story, I never like to talk about my story because I think it's not really meaningful compared to other people that have arrived to the region. And it's basically because I'm here by accident. I really moved to the United States because I fall in love, which is a silly story. I wasn't intended to move to the United States. As many people, I wasn't forced to leave my country. I have many privilege. And that's why I think for me, telling my story is not meaningful, because I arrived here with many, many privileges and allow me to be where I am now. So basically, I came here to the United States because I got married and I found someone who was happened to be in the United States, and then I start creating a new life here in Pittsburgh. And it has many, many barriers that I have to overcome, even though I spoke English and I had 10 years of experience. It's a tough road, even though I had, again, many things on my side. It was still very, very hard. And I think that's why also make me more aware of the need of advocate and be more involved for the people that don't have as many privileges I had to start a new life in a new country.
Yeah, that's an incredible, beautiful story. Love is always a beautiful story, and an incredibly important point that even with all of those privileges, there were still real challenges and feeling that you belong here. So thank you for the work that you're leading. Andres, how about you?
So Ivonne and I share many things. We are from Colombia, and I also see myself as having moved here under, ideal circumstances in a way. I moved here because of love, the love of music, not of a person. I came here as a student. I am a conductor and I am a pianist, and I moved here because I wanted to study with a Brazilian pianist who was living in Texas at the time. So I came here as a student. But like Ivonne, I came because I wanted to. I did have my family's support to come here. They wanted me to come here. I had time to plan my coming, but it was a big cultural shock moving from Bogota. I'm from Medellin originally, but I went to school in Bogota, which is a very large city with lots of museums, public transportation, and so on. And then moving to Texas, to Fort Worth, Texas, where the summers reach 110, 115 degrees, and having no idea what I was going to do. I did not speak English at the time as well. At the time I moved here, I spoke better French. Now that has reversed. I have completely forgotten my French, and now I can speak English. But it was difficult. It was difficult even in the best of circumstances. And in my work at City of Asylum, I work with writers who are forced out of their countries under threat of persecution, incarceration, or death. And I have this idea that I know a little bit what cultural shock is. I will never be able to know what they go through when you have to leave overnight, leave everything behind you. But I know that it is difficult, and I want to do as much as I can personally to help them in their journey here in the United States.
Thank you, Andres. Fazly.
Yes, my experiences again is different than Ivonne and Andres. So I came in US to save my lives and my kids' lives. So it was very unfortunate that it was a very hard decision for me to leave my country. My parents, my siblings, everyone, and my loved ones, where I was born and grew up. I never thought that one day would come that I leave the country at that situation. My parents were not happy. I travel. My dad told me that I know if you go, you will not come back. You will stay there. So I will not see my grandson again. I remember that he cried and just sat down and said that you broke my back. So with this decision, don't go. And I told him that if I stay here, what I experience in my life, my kids will experience. So I really don't want that they all the time hear what I heard in my childhood that is still in my mind. Just all war, gun, fire, and all these things. I don't want them to experience. That's why I have to go. It's very hard. I came here and then I found myself one day in Pittsburgh alone with no families, no friends. Nobody was here to help me. or at least I know for 1 year I did not speak my language there, your Persian, with somebody who speak my language. So that was very, very sad. Even I decided to move from Pittsburgh to somewhere else to be closer to a community that we feel more belonging. And it was, we passed very difficult time, and was very rough time. Me, my wife, my kids, it sometimes happened that we all cry and we said that where we are, why we are here, what to do now. That was really difficult situation that we had, and that's why now I'm really passionate to work for JFCS. That's the only reason, and I'm helping at least more refugees. I know what they feel when they come. So even if you met one person, well, like very come to you and offer help, that means a lot. And how you feel comfortable that somebody is here and tell you, if you need any help, call me. That's a very big relief. That has happened to me. That's why whenever any refugees comes, I call them and I give my number. I tell them, if you need help, I'm here to help you. And that's the reason I came here. And now it's almost more than 5 years I'm in Pittsburgh. So I'm in much better position than compared to the first year.
Thank you for sharing that, Fazly, and also just for bringing to light the weight of the responsibility, what we heard from Sun's story of, once you're in this country, but what you're sharing, that weight of the responsibility as you're leaving, as you're fleeing, as you have no other choice. Ivonne, let's get into the refugee experience specifically and the work that Jewish Family and Community Services is leading as the largest resettlement agency in our region. You were recently quoted by the Philadelphia Inquirer on the arrival of Afghan families fleeing their Taliban-toppled homeland who are resettling in Western Pennsylvania. This obviously isn't just happening now, it's been happening for years. What can you tell us about the landscape of refugee resettlement in Pittsburgh today as it relates to this crisis, but again, also to others who are arriving from around the world?
Yes, thank you. So JFCS as a resettlement agency, we are at the forefront of making sure that the families that move to Pittsburgh have everything that they need. In the prior years, refugee resettlement was very slow pace because of policies that were set at the national level. Refugees weren't coming in the same speed or amount as years before. Since 2020, with this new administration, we are seeing more refugee families coming to the United States and also to Pittsburgh. And to give you an idea, from January to today, we have resettled 67 individuals to Pittsburgh, and that comes from basically Congo and Iraq, Syria, and Middle East countries, also Afghanistan, and a few individuals from Nepal. So resettlement happens every month. With humanitarian crisis as what we are seeing in Afghanistan, everything kind of changed in a little bit, because we have a regular flow of refugees that have been in the pipeline of the resettlement process for years. In this humanitarian crisis, we are adding more refugees that are going to be here, and it's everything a little bit disorganized and messy, and with very little time, we need to prepare to make sure that they have everything that they need to feel safe and comfortable to start a new life here in Pittsburgh.
Great, thanks for that. Andrés, City of Asylum plays an incredibly important role in our community and in the world by serving as a sanctuary for writers and artists in exile. Can you give us a feel for your work and what some of what your writers are facing that forced them to flee?
Yes, Betty. So City of Asylum was founded in 2004 to provide a safe home for persecuted writers. And since then, we have given sanctuary to 9 writers, 1 scholar, 1 musician, and 1 filmmaker. And we bring them here to Pittsburgh, to the north side. We have houses on Samsonia Way, and the writers and artists are able to live in those houses. They receive a stipend, health insurance, career development support, legal help if needed. And they come here because they are being persecuted in their countries because of their ideas. Each one of them has a very special, individual, unique story to tell. So the first one who came here was Chinese author and poet Huan Zhang, who had been imprisoned and tortured in China. He had completely stopped writing. He was already in the United States, and when he came to Pittsburgh, he felt that he was able to create again. And he started writing poetry, performing poetry. He's a great performer, magnetic performer. And he even painted his poetry in Chinese calligraphy on the facade of his home. Some of the writers we have right now are fleeing. One of them, Tuin Dash, is here from Bangladesh. He was added to a hit list in Bangladesh. The Al-Qaeda Bangladesh was murdering writers at the time, and he was able to get out of the country and arrive here in April of 2016. We have had writers from Venezuela, El Salvador, Iran, Burma, Syria, Ethiopia, and the list goes on and on and on. So they're really, each one of them is different. The musician in exile, we have the first musician in exile, Mai Khoi from Vietnam. She decided to run for office in Vietnam. You can self-nominate and run for office, and she ran on a pro-democracy, anti-censorship platform, and the government, of course, did not like that. So they started raiding her rehearsals and her performances and following her around. So she eventually got out of Vietnam last year, and she's now here in Pittsburgh. So it's a very different story for each one of them, and what City of Asylum does is we work with them. We bring them here and we help them become independent and make sure that they continue creating. So every writer we have had has completed a work while they're in the residency at City of Asylum. And we also have them publish their works. City of Asylum Pittsburgh is different from other organizations, similar organizations around the world, because we are the only one that is grassroots supported. Many of the other ones have financial support from the cities or from universities. We are supported by the community. So this has been something very heartwarming, is to see how Pittsburghers have really embraced the artists and writers and the organization as we welcome them into the city.
Excellent. Can you share a little bit more on what it means to be an exile from your country and this connection between art and struggle?
Yes. So City of Asylum, or the Cities of Asylum movement was founded by Salman Rushdie. He had to go into hiding and he realized that he was able to survive because he had connections, he had resources, he had financial resources. So they founded this movement trying to get writers who are not in the same situation. One of the co-founders of the movement here in the United States, author Russell Banks, says that literature is a solitary art. And that's the thing, the writer is in their home writing. They don't have necessarily the same network that if you were a journalist or if you're a performing artist, you have many more opportunities to interact with different people. The writers are really just by themselves writing, and their ideas are so powerful that regimes around the world feel threatened just because they're able to imagine the world in different ways. So all of them have been persecuted by the governments in their countries. In the case of Wang Zhang was very, very specific. It was the Chinese government. It was, full out persecution. Some of the other writers have been harassed by people who seem to be private individuals, but you can tell because of the narrative that this is really somebody that the government sent there. Many of them are also activists, and that's why they're being persecuted. And they have to go in exile because they have to make a choice. Do they stay in their countries and never write or create anything and basically not say things that the government doesn't want to hear, or do they go elsewhere and be able to express themselves freely? And of course, many of them, of the writers around the world, are under threat of death and incarceration. So the circumstances are really dire when they choose to go in exile. And it's basically, as Fazly was saying, you're leaving your family, you're leaving your culture, your language, everything, all your network behind. But it's a very difficult decision, and sometimes it's the only decision that will allow us to remain alive.
And we'll be hearing from one of City of Asylum's writers in residence later in the program. This month, Pittsburgh became a certified welcoming city. Fazly, you're working day in and day out with families, directly helping them from the moment they arrive, as you said, throughout their retirement resettlement process. You understand the barriers newcomers face and how hard this integration process can be from your own experience. And you also get the strengths. We oftentimes focus so much on the barriers, right? And the challenge that we forget that these are whole people with strengths and assets and beautiful aspects that they're bringing with us. Strengths that are often not seen, let alone celebrated in this new homeland. So can you share a bit, are there one or two things that you'd like to see changed that would have a big impact on better welcoming immigrants? So this welcoming certified is a great next step, but there's always more we can do, right? Is there one or two things you'd like to see changed?
Yes, I mean, if we talk in refugees perspective and also the personal experience and talking every day with immigrants, refugees, they're coming. And I think there is a lot of rooms for change. And the one thing I really recommend and really I'm thinking always, I'm saying, in general, all refugees needs help, but women refugees needs more help and support. And especially in my circumstance, in my example, and especially people come from Afghanistan, those women in Afghanistan, either they were locked down at home, or if they work, they were really fearful at work. They didn't work really freely. They were fear from harassment and also from traditional country that you're not allowed to go to work and you do what you want and how you express your opinion and show your talent, even in a meeting like women and men. So usually women shouldn't really express their opinion, that it's really be opposite of the men's opinion. That will be considered as a bad thing. So when women come here, they see a new opportunity for them, but still they have that fear in their mind. They think it will be the same situation at the same place and the same men dominant country. So when I talk to the families, and always women express desire, interest to work and go community, but on another side, I see that have less confidence what to do. And my recommendation is that if we provide more training opportunity and talking with the families and let them, and first let them to express their talent and what they have, and then help them to reach their goal and achieve their dream. They came here to see America as a dream land of opportunities. When they say land of opportunities, how they can achieve to these opportunities. So always like knowledge is the key for them. Let them provide some culture orientation, systematic culture orientation classes, and also to help them to learn the language as soon as possible. I know a woman that came last year. She did not speak the language at all, but now I talked to her a week ago and she speaks very good English. And I was surprised how she learned in 1 year such a good English. So said, I go to library, I find resources, I talk with people, I now enroll in CCC. So they're moving forward, just they need a little push, and then they will bring a lot of strength, as you mentioned. I really love this word. They came with a hope. They came with a lot of energy. They come with a positive energy to make a big difference. And that's, I think, is a huge asset to the community. And the community, as now we talk as a community, our responsibility is to help them to show their talent and help them to achieve their goal.
I love this compelling plea for a women-centered solution to support women refugees. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Ivonne, similarly for you, you chair the All for All Coalition on Immigration and moderated a town hall with the then mayoral candidates. We'll have a new mayor in office come November. Looking at immigrant inclusion from a policy perspective on a local level, what are a couple of things that you would like to see from our new mayor on day one? And again, that looking locally, but we also recognize that the Biden administration is finding its footing on immigration policy as well. So if you want to add in some components from a national perspective, feel free.
Sure. At this moment, one of the biggest challenge is to provide support to refugees that are arriving from Afghanistan without the refugee or the SIV status. They are arriving with a humanitarian pathway, so they really don't have access to many of the services and support systems that refugees and SIVs, immigrants have access to when they move to Pittsburgh. And that really puts a lot of constraints in our work, because we cannot, resettlement organizations, AJAPO and JFCS, can't do very minimum for these families that are coming to Pittsburgh. And it's not because we don't want to, it's because they don't qualify, for instance, to food stamps. They don't qualify to medical benefits. So we have these, I'm showing this an example of policies that are made at the federal level that we cannot change. Only Congress can act to change those policies to make sure that people that arrive as parolees, as they call, and in a humanitarian way, have access to more support systems. So that's one big thing that we can do as a national level, is calling your congressman and congressperson and advocate for changing those policies. And at the local level, I think connected to that, it's also important to analyze our policies, and even with access to resources or access to education and access, as Fazly was mentioning, of opportunities to connect with services as even learning English. Refugees and immigrants don't have that possibility many times, because they have to start with employment and work and paying for their bills almost like at 4 months after they arrive here. Imagine yourself living in a new country when you don't have an idea of the language, or maybe you know a little bit of English, but you still don't understand how things work here. And we are asking you, because the system is setting in that way, we're asking you need to learn how to take the bus. You need to feel comfortable about it. I know that you have fear, and it's like a lot of uncertainties, but you need to pay your bills, because we can help you until like this moment. And resettlement agencies, we do our best to connect immigrants and refugees to many support. So it's not that after certain months, we are telling them you are on your own, but that's how the resettlement process is set up. So for us, that with the new administration, I think it's important to continue working on how we put services and processes in place that are immigrant and refugee friendly. There are many little details that probably many people don't know, as like applications for housing and affordable housing. There are maybe the options to do that, but the way to get there and how you sustain those options, it's incredibly difficult. Refugees and immigrants that don't know the process, that even if they have a little bit of English, they are not going to be able to do that on their own. So we need more systems in place, more staff at the administration that are willing and that have that responsibility to help refugees and immigrants to navigate those systems. At this moment, it's the responsibility of resettlement agencies. But with more refugees arriving, and we also have limited capacity, we need an administration that is more willing to dedicate staff to do and provide those services for refugee and immigrants, because it needs to be a responsibility that is shared by the many organizations that provide services to immigrants and refugees. And I think that's kind of a big problem in Pittsburgh, that we have made huge improvements, but one of the problems is that government and other organizations think that refugee and immigrants are the responsibility of resettlement agencies, right, and that we are the ones that have to work with them, and the ones that we know how to work with refugee and immigrants. And we many times don't see them as residents. They are Pittsburghers, and as such, they need to have access to many organizations or whatever organization or services they need, that organization and that local government employee needs to know how to work with an immigrant and a refugee. So I think that there is a lot of need to improve that approach, or how we see and how we make more visible immigrants and refugees as part of residents, and not like that other type of anomaly, for saying in a way, that we need to figure out how to work with.
Right, and how we care for one another as neighbors, because however you got here, you're a Pittsburgher now, period. Andres, the writers at City of Asylum arrive under a range of different immigration statuses, which makes it obviously incredibly distinct and complex. What about from your perspective? Are there policy changes, local, national, international, or even, again, at the human community level that you'd like to see?
Yes. So the Cities of Asylum movement was founded, as I said, by Salman Rushdie, by Wally Soyinka, who's right here, the gentleman with the white hair and beard, by Václav Havel, and by Jacques Derrida. And the premise was that cities can do a lot more than governments, like national governments. Like the minister, the minister in France has to think about what they say and how that's going to affect the commerce with different countries. So they have to be careful. The mayor maybe is not tied to those conversations. So the idea is that since governments, national governments, are not able to address many of these issues, let's have the cities address those issues. But definitely there are many policies at the national level. It would be great to have an artist category, a creative category for people coming into the United States, special visas categories. The artists are a target. They can reach a lot of people, and that makes them a very easy target. When they silence one artist, and then people start feeling fearful if they were able to silence somebody with that name, like what I'm as just a citizen going to against that government. So it is a very complicated situation. At the local level, I think that's one of the strengths of City of Asylum in Pittsburgh, is that the neighbors have really embraced the writers, and that they gain a global perspective by having those writers here. And all of a sudden people in the neighborhood and are trying to understand what's going on in Ethiopia or in Bangladesh or in China, Iran, in all of those countries when people may not have that interest before. So it's basically also they start asking questions about injustice elsewhere, and those a lot of times translate into injustice here in the United States. So it's really a great conversation that happens between the writers and artists and the city, that what we have here. Just to give you an example, I think at the policy level, there are many things that can change, but ultimately the artists are able to change people's minds and people's hearts through their art. And that is why they are so powerful. And that is why regimes all around the world are so fearful of artists, because there's a lot of power in the art. And that's a perfect segue to the next section, because you're actually going to hear from one of our current writers in residence at City of Asylum. This writer has to remain anonymous because of security reasons, and will be performing under the pen name of Rama. We will hear some of the works that she created recently, and they were created thanks to a grant from the Heinz Endowment. It's called Marking This Moment in Time. They asked writers here in Pittsburgh and artists and everyday citizens to tell their experiences during the pandemic, during the social unrest because of the murder of George Floyd, to capture the moment that we are living. It's a unique moment, and it's a crucial moment in time. And we decided to ask our writers to write poems about that time. So I'll just turn over the virtual stage to Rama.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me and all of us here as people who came from different countries to America. I just want to say a few words or few sentences that before we came here, I will talk about myself. We have like dreams, big dreams that will find like justice and safe and love, of course, and this equality But after we came, we faced other challenges like language barrier and this race thing. As a woman, I came from Africa, from Sudan, and so it's not easy at all to live in America. But still, when we find organizations like City of Asylum, they make our life much easier than other people who don't find this kind of support. So my hope is just to treat the refugees and look at them and as humans, not as numbers, not as people who came here to take anything. No, they came here because we have this image about America that support people and doing good things for people. But I hope they find that thing, they find this picture in their mind like the same in actual life. Now I will read some of poems that I wrote and during the pandemic. I will read in Arabic and there is a translation in English on the screen. صرخة للتحرر تراكم منذ آلاف السنين دافئا متحفزا تحت الطبقات حائل اللون خلف الابتسامات الملونة الخادعة. بالأمس أطل برأسه كأفعى من عمق كهوف أسطورية نائية ومنسية. أطلت الأفعى برأسها بغتة نفخت نارها السامة في جسدي فاحترقت. بالأمس فقط عرفت معنى غضب كامن. أما اليوم بدأت رحلة التحرر وأشرقت الشمس. على تلة بعيدة واسعة وخضراء وقفت. يميني حقول الذرة متشعبة كمتاهة. يساري تستلقي حبات اليقطين البرتقالية على الأرض كشموس صغيرة في لحظة مغيب. تخففت من ملابسي وتعريت للريح. فتحت ذراعي وقلت لها هيت لك. غسلتني الريح كما يغسل المطر الأشجار. أزاحت الريح عني حملي الثقيل. طهرتني وتخللت كل مسامي. في لحظة شعرت أني والريح واحد. شعرتني هي وشعرتها أنا. بحنان ولطف رفعتني الريح عن الأرض وحملتني معها إلى كل الجهات. A vast void. فراغ واسع. يغرقني. السماء حبلى بالأبيض. الجليد يتهيأ للنزول مجددا مضيفا بياضا فاقعا في كل مكان يجرح العين. طبقات فوق طبقات والأرض صامتة. ماذا لو استطعت رسم خيط أسود على خد السماء كسرت به رتابة المشهد. بياض حارق يلفني. للثلج لزعة حارقة كما للنار. أتوق إلى الهرب. ماذا لو استطعت القبض على اللحظة الفاصلة بين الآن والماضي. ماذا لو قفزت فيها وعشت حياتي في الفجوة الرحيمة. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rama, for those words and for sharing your journey with us and for being a Pittsburgher now. To close this out, I'd love to go back to our panelists and sit in this question of belonging. The immigration space has evolved in the language that it uses from what we often used to refer to as assimilation, which is no longer the language that is used, right? Because it's about bringing your culture and celebrating it and marrying it with the new culture. So it went from assimilation to integration to inclusion to now more often we hear this language around belonging, what it means to truly belong to a community. We've touched on this throughout the conversation, but I'd love to hear from any of our speakers who would like to share what belonging means to you. How do you know that you belong? Either your own story or maybe someone in your community. But if there's one thing that jumps out to you, that a moment of belonging, it would be great to hear that.
I will start. So that idea of belonging is really at the center of what we try to at City of Asylum and welcome the writers, and it's not just providing them with a home where they feel safe and you know, stipend and all of the support, but really making sure that they become part of this community. And I happen to live on the same street as the writers Samsonia Way, so I walk around and it is wonderful to see them being able to talk with the neighbors, and there are stories like people writing poems and sliding them under the door of Wan Zhang, the first writer. Rama is a single mother with 2 children. And last year, for some of the birthdays, we painted blue circles 6 feet apart on the street. And then there was a neighborhood party where the birthdays were celebrated. So we really try to integrate them as much into the community, because I think that's very important. It's not just the feeling of being safe, which of course is what we are here to do, but it's also this feeling of finding a place where people care for you, but you also care and you know what your neighbors are doing. So if you talk to anyone on the street on Samsonia Way, they will have lots of stories to tell about the writers, and I know that the writers have lots of stories to tell as well. So they are coming here to this neighborhood and becoming part of the community for a couple of years until they are able to be independent.
Great.
For me, and thanks Andrés for sharing that, and thank you for the question. I think to me, belonging, it's a complex process. And for me, belonging, it's attached to identity and who you are. Sometimes, and I hear many people saying that people need to become American, that they need to be thankful and appreciative because now they are here and they are safe. Why they don't start behaving like us? And to me, belonging is when you can be yourself, when you can keep your traditions, your culture, but feel that you are part of the community. So I just to share a personal story, I try to walk every day and do a loop in my street with my son and some of my family members. And I love to see other families with other kids doing the same. And I love to see families that don't speak English, and we try to just interact with baby talk and saying just minimal words, but we connect, and we know that we are like babies and kids are doing their own thing, and moms try to say like what age, and we say like fingers or things like that, and trying to feel like even though we are not speaking the same language, not even communicating with like our second language, if that's the case, we are all part of the city and that we belong, and we don't need to just become and eat the food that other people kind of talking about Sun's performance before. It's like keeping yourself in the way that if you want to change, you're free to change. If you want to stay as you know, keep your traditions and your culture like close to your heart, that's fine. And everyone is going to embrace you the way you are. So for me, that's how belonging happens, but it's sometimes it's messy and it's very personal. And so hopefully a lot of people that are here feel that they belong.
Thank you, Ivonne. Fazly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, is belonging is that community trusts you, and you know that you are part of this community. If you are in a difficult situation, there are people in a community, they come and help you, not to avoid you, not to ignoring you. And also, when I feel belonging, that's when I go to car shop, they don't charge me more than somebody that who is from the same community. If they know from my accent, if they know I am not familiar with all the system how it works, they don't charge me double. I feel belonging when I'm in a car accident and I treat it same. Like if it's not my fault, and the report I see he is not in fault. And if I want to see a local authority, and I can reach with no problem. So if I have an issue and if I have a problem and I feel safe and secure to voice and tell that issue with somebody in local authority or with somebody, with a friend, with no fear, and I'm sure that nobody will come after me. So there are so many things even coming from the refugee immigrants communities. And it's very sad that sometimes when is all this happen and we are talking about belonging, but it's not practical, it's not in realistic. You can if I get a insurance code, or if somebody else get insurance code, is different. So this all when comes, then you feel that it's still the community treats you differently. Then why is like that? When it's something that if somebody knows that you're not familiar with something, you are treated differently. I really wish that one day this all things go away and everyone feel the same, that they belong to the community. Community is more than like a group of people. Community is like talk about a larger number of people, and you are part of that. And the last thing is, I feel belonging. If the communities need help, they come and ask my support as well to go help them with something. That at that time I know now they trust me, I trust them.
Thank you so much for all of that. I hear you on the trust, the safety, community, and being part of, not outside or othered, being part of something. Thank you so much, Andrés, Ivonne, Fazly. What a beautiful conversation, an important conversation, a difficult truth, but it's such an important one to really embrace and understand the experience of those who are forced to flee and create a community where they too can belong. Thank you for your time today. Thank you to our performers, to our artists, Sun and Rama, for your beautiful, beautiful, important words. Today's program was recorded and will be made available for viewing in the coming days. Later today, we have another conversation continuing our summit through tomorrow. Today's afternoon conversation at 4 o'clock will focus on building a more globally minded and compassionate workplace. And it's centered through the perspective of youth. So it will actually be moderated by a wonderful high school student, Hannah Shin, who is also co-chair of our youth board, and we'll have youth perspectives on the panel, as well as the former head of compassion from LinkedIn and learning, Scott Shute, and the learning instigator, local advocate on education, and just fearless, wonderful human, Michelle King, will also be on the panel. We'd love for you to join us there. Thank you all. Until next time.